I'm going to be blunt about this one. This list did not turn out the way I expected it to. Okay, folks. It's Sunday. That means Doctor Who, and it's time for my monthly list of Doctor Who related stuff. And I'm going to do something that I have been meaning to get around to for a while, and I am going to rank supporting characters, specifically non-companion supporting characters. So basically any character who has appeared in more than one story, reminder, two-parters count as one story, is eligible for inclusion on this, provided they do not meet the requirements that I laid out for companions. Also noting, I am limiting this list to the modern era. I am not excluding the classic era because I don't think it's worthy of inclusion. I'm excluding it because I'm still catching up on it. I haven't seen enough of it to be able to judge all those characters and include them fairly. So, narrowing it down to modern era, and to remind folks, the way that I define a companion is two kinds of companions. I consider a true companion any character who has appeared in more than one story and actually traveled in the Tardis. And I also have what I consider to be one-time companions, which is characters who definitely traveled in the TARDIS but only appeared in one story. So this is basically everybody else who is a recurring character. So with that laid out, I got one other thing I'm going to address. Somebody who actually was going to come in at number 1 on this, I had to drop off the list because I screwed up on my companion ranking. And that's Vincent van Gogh. Because I forgot that he did travel in the TARDIS. I forgot. I don't know how I forgot. It's one of the best scenes in the thing. But when I was doing the list, I forgot that he actually traveled in the TARDIS to go and see that museum. So he should have been included on my list of companions. And he wasn't because I screwed up. I'm not doubling down on that mistake, which means I'm not putting him here just because he wasn't on the list where he should have been. So next time I redo the companion list, he will actually be on it. But so he's off. And once he was gone and I took a closer look at what was going on this list, boy, yeah, did not call how it looked. Don't know if you'll be able to hear the rain. Boy, that's coming down. Love that sound. Anyway, let's get to this. One last thing. Some of the characters I'm going to name, we do know for a fact have traveled in time, but that does not mean the same thing as definitely having traveled in the TARDIS, because the TARDIS is not the only way that characters can travel in time. So some of these characters were excluded off of my companions list for that reason, because we don't know for certain that the way they traveled in time was through the TARDIS, and some of them are on here instead. So this is the way I have chosen to define them. Unless I flat out broke my own rules, please don't try to argue with me on the definitions. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get through this. So, number 10, and I'm only doing 10 best. I'm not doing a full ranking like I did with Modern Companions. Is that enough caveats? God. Okay, so, number 10, Isildur. Now, I know my inclusion of her in anything approaching a positive light might seem really weird, given her participation in the abomination that is Hell-Bent. And honestly, though, I really love her second appearance. I really like her a lot in The Woman Who Lived. She was solid in The Girl Who Died, but what they did when they brought her back and the performance given for The Girl Who Lived, I thought that was a really neat idea. And the idea of, a human, someone who has not had their physiology altered in a way to accommodate the fact that they're living way longer than they should, and the fact that basically she runs out of memory, and the only way she can remember past stuff is to read the accounts she wrote down of her past lives, because the human brain is not made to remember centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries of experiences. I thought that was really interesting. I thought they wrung a certain amount of tragedy out of it. The episode overall is unfortunately not great, but I honestly still kind of have a soft spot for this character. Again, despite her use in Hell-Bent. Number 9, Craig Owens. I know that there seems to be a fair amount of animosity towards The Lodger, and especially towards Closing Time. I actually like both of those episodes. Neither of them are phenomenal, but I like Craig, and I'm generally not a particularly big fan of James Corbin. In general, he irritates me. but I like him here. I think it's just because he's got really good performance chemistry with Matt Smith. I think that helps a great deal, and I just sort of like this normal guy, you know, who's obviously never going to travel with the Doctor. He's not up for it, but, you know, trying to deal with the fact that this guy is in his life and work with it as best as he can. And I really love at the end of The Lodger where, you know, he's asked the Doctor, "Are you lying?" The Doctor says, "Of course I'm lying." Fair enough. Boom. And he just goes for it, you know, to save the girl, save the world, you know, do what he can. And I find Craig kind of endearing. I don't ever want him to come back, I don't think. I think the 2 episodes we got was as much as you could wring out of him, but I rather enjoy him. Number 8, Pete Tyler. And now, when I count this, I'm actually not counting Father's Day, because I'm talking about the alternate reality Pete Tyler. The Pete's World Pete Tyler. And I like the dimension that is granted to him. I like the sense of sort of woefulness about him. As he, you know, looks over this world, you know, he's rich, he's got all this power, and he's still not happy. You know, the world just kind of, and then, you know, finding the strength to fight back and to stand up to the Doctor, like from a position of will. That's a pretty severe rarity, and I'm a soft spot for him finding Jackie at the end of towards the end of Doomsday, and yeah, I like Pete. Next up, number 7, Kate Stewart. Now, prior to Series 9, back when I was originally conceiving this list, I've been sitting on this concept for a while. She was like top 3 contention. She is such crap. She's not great in Series 9 in general. She's really bad and dumb in the Zygon 2-parter. And like, she was first introduced as somebody, you know, who has a brain in her head, and she's willing to confront the Doctor, and she's got a tactical mind, which, you know, is just looks at things differently from the Doctor because he's trying to avoid the conflict, and she comes from that more militaristic background. And then later on, she's just dumb, just willfully ignoring him, putting herself into really stupid situations, being just really poorly utilized as a character, to the point that I kind of wish they hadn't brought her back for Series 9. She was aggravating, because before that, I loved her. I loved her connection to the Brigadier. I love a lot about this character, but so much of what happened with her in Series 9 just did not work for me. In any case, she would have been higher. I do like her, but there you go. Next up, number 6, Strax. So, it's hard not to blame Strax for the overall trivialization of the Sontarans as villains. I mean, it's really hard to not blame him for that, because he has basically become the standard bearer for them, because we haven't really seen them do anything of note, I would say, since the Pandorica opens. And even then it was just one that we saw, but, you know, he was still intimidating there. But ever since Strax came along, he's kind of all we get. He's all we see, and he has devalued the Sontarans. I still really like him as a character. I find him fun. I find him funny. I love his obsession with violent solutions, and how he's always proposing the most violent option for a problem that they have, and everyone just kind of looks at him like, no. And then he just like, oh. I love that kind of interaction. I like those kinds of characters, the ones who want an excuse to let loose, and they rarely get it. It's a shame. He might be a little bit too dumb for his own good, but I do still enjoy him. Number 5, Osgood. So, how do I cover this? Okay, first of all, allow me to freely grant and freely admit, Osgood is the epitome of fan pandering. She is a Doctor Who fangirl turned into a character that the Doctor himself immediately takes a liking to. That is pure fan pandering. But when it works, and it works here. She's adorable, and she's good at her job, and she's focused. It's really terrific. And it's been a while since I've talked about this. To answer the age-old question of which one died, which one did Missy kill? Was it the Zygon or was it the human one? It's the Zygon. It has to have been, because the entire premise of that entire thing was that there is a balance. There's a human, there's a Zygon, both appearing to be the same person. So if the human died and they replace it with another Zygon, now we've got two Zygons. That's not the balance. It doesn't work anymore. So the human had to have always been the one who lived. There you go. I'm sure other people will tell me I'm wrong and explain why. Number 4, Madame Vastra. She's a kick-butt lizard woman in Victorian England. I mean, it's hard for me to not just like that on premise. And I like that you have that sense of a warriorness about him, but she's kind of acclimated to the time and the era. It's certainly better than Strax has. And I like her relationships and her interactions with the other characters, how she kind of is the detective, how she's kind of taking on a bit of a Sherlock Holmes thing going on. And I find the entire setup of who she is and where she is placed and how she runs her life to just be really, it's pulpy fun. It is ridiculous, but it's the kind of ridiculous that I kind of enjoy. Number 3, and I know this one's going to be controversial. Danny Pink. I know a lot of people really, really don't like Danny Pink. The thing is, though, I've never been entirely clear if it's because they don't like Danny as a character or they don't like what they feel he represents, because how he kind of stood in as a punching bag for the Doctor, for him to just beat up on soldiers. Sort of how he forced Clara to keep coming back, so they couldn't just go out in adventures because he was the tether that kept forcing her to come back all the dang time. So I don't know if it's people not liking the character or not liking the character's effect on everything else. But I like Danny. I think Danny has a great mind on him. I really like the way he processes information and tries to cope with the information that he gets about what is going on around him, particularly when it comes to things like the Doctor. And I think his send-off at the end, I'm sure other people find it incredibly cheesy, the idea of basically love saving somebody from complete conversion. Yes, it's cheesy, but I think it works, and I think he sells it. And I think in many ways it's the redemption of the beatdown that the Doctor has been giving to him and the whole concepts of soldiers and that kind of service for the series up to that point. I think Danny is a strong spirit of a character, and I enjoy him. And I think I find him likable as a presence. So I never got on the hate train with him. Number 2, Jenny Flint. So why is this particular member of the Paternoster gang so much higher than the other 2? I don't know. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to pin this down. There's just something I like about her better than any of the others. I think what it is how it feeds into how I really want the Doctor to have a companion, not from the modern era. I'd really like him to take somebody from the past. I would have loved him to have traveled with the Victorian version of Clara instead of the modern era one. There's something about somebody from a period in the past who just adapts and rolls with stuff that, you or I in the modern day would have a hard time wrapping our heads around, that I just find so endearing and loving. And I love her relationship with Vastra, not just because they're a kind of cute, adorable, weird, queer couple, but I like their chemistry together. And I like it when Jenny just unleashes and kicks butt. And yet she still has that sort of from the streets Victorian just sort of street urchin feel and vibe to her. And I like those kinds of characters. You know, I grew up on stuff like Oliver Twist, and I like that sort of mentality to a character, especially when they can be done endearingly, which I absolutely think she is. So here we go with number one, and this surprised me, but the more I thought about it, especially once I took Vincent off, this felt right. Number one, recurring, non-companion, Harriet Jones. I think what puts her up top is she has the most complete arc as a character. From when we first meet her to her, from her lowly position where she has no assumption that anybody knows who she is or takes her seriously, then even when she attains a status of power, it doesn't go to her head. She takes her responsibility very seriously, and she still has no assumption that anyone knows who she is. But she is taking very seriously the weight of responsibility that is on her shoulders. And even though the Doctor condemns her, I feel wrongly for her actions, she stands by it, and at the same time doesn't hold a grudge against him, so that when she comes back in the Stolen Earth and does what she does and ultimately sacrifices herself, it's always for the greater good. And that is what she is always has on her mind. Because so often when you hear people saying for the greater good, it's a rationalization and a justification for something they want to do. She really does put her money where her mouth is. She does things that she doesn't want to do, doesn't like to do, and ultimately will result in her death because it's what's best for the most people. She feels sincerely. I think she is a well-performed, well-written, strong character. And I think she's the best recurring character who isn't a companion that modern Doctor Who has had. This was a much harder list to come up with than I thought, but what are your thoughts on these kinds of characters? Is this overly specific to that I parse it out too weirdly? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff that you can do. You know what it is. There's buttons and there's links down there. Click as many of them as you like. The Patreon one's kind of the big one, but whatever. So just remember, folks, you are the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.